Welcome back, and now for the news in detail. The Taliban have rejected U.S. allegations that they intend to break the Doha peace deal. Earlier, 3 U.S. intelligence officials said the Taliban have no intention of honoring the deal. In a tweet, a Taliban spokesperson, Suhail Shaheen, said the assertions made by the American officials are not justifiable. Disputing the intelligence officials' position, Shaheen said the peace agreement is being implemented at a satisfactory pace so far. Washington and the Taliban signed a peace agreement on February 29th to end the 19-year-old Afghan war. Meanwhile, a member of the Logar Provincial Council and his 3 guards have been killed in a shooting in Afghanistan's capital, Kabul. No one has claimed the responsibility for the attack yet. Police say Nasir Ghairat was targeted near his home in the Karteno area in PD8. They said his driver was also wounded in the attack. Police said the incident is under investigation. Ghairat was also the former head of Logar's Provincial Council. After the Delhi riots, sit-ins against the Citizenship Act have sharply surged across India. 83 people, mostly Muslims, have been killed in protests and rallies against the BJP's new law. The officials say 291 new protest sites have emerged on the model of Shaheen Bagh in the last 60 days. The officials said, like in New Delhi, these protests can lead to communal riots and violence. Hundreds of women are conducting a sit-in at a 1-kilometer stretch of a 6-lane highway crossing through Shaheen Bagh in Delhi. Protesters have refused to end the protest until the withdrawal of the Citizenship Amendment Act. In India, Muslims have become refugees in their own country after being targeted by Hindu extremists in the New Delhi riots. Today, hundreds of Muslims are living in camps at the Mustafabad open prayer ground. Forced to flee their homes after being attacked by their fellow citizens, these people no longer have anywhere to go. Look at the appalling plight of New Delhi's Muslims in this report.
The rise of Hindu extremism in India has left Muslims extremely vulnerable. After being targeted in sporadic cow lynchings for years, Muslims have now been attacked for protesting against the controversial Citizenship Amendment Act. New Delhi's appointed commission has even confessed to this, revealing that the riots were one-sided and pre-planned to inflict maximum damage on Muslims. The fear of violence has now forced many Muslims to change their appearance and even their names. Over 1,000 Muslims have taken refuge in an open prayer ground in New Delhi's Mustafabad area.
I was fleeing from our burning house. By the time I went to save my child, he received some burn injuries and I took him and ran to the rooftop. Our neighbors saved us by physically pulling us from our rooftops to theirs.
One victim, Hazra Begum, remembers men chanting Hindu slogans as they hacked, battered and burned Muslims to death.
My heart aches so badly thinking of our homes. They burned everything. We are going from pillar to post, but our hearts are aching at the thought of our homes. The conditions here at the relief camp. We can't live here, but there is nothing left of our homes either. There are no clothes left to wear, nor bed sheets to sleep on.
The New Delhi hospital list discloses that over 50 people, mostly Muslims, died in last month's riots. Critics blame Indian Prime Minister Modi and his Hindu nationalist ruling party for stirring animosity against Muslims.
In Malaysia, the palace has denied allegations of a royal coup in appointing the Prime Minister after Mahathir Mohamad resigned. It was responding to accusations that the king overturned election results by naming Muhyiddin Yassin as the PM, despite the opposition claiming a majority. In a statement, the palace said the king used his discretionary powers as prescribed in the constitution. Muhyiddin was sworn in last Sunday as the head of the government. He is expected to unveil his cabinet early next week. He has postponed the start of parliamentary proceedings by 2 months amid opposition efforts to challenge his government with a confidence vote. The country plunged into political turmoil after Mahathir Mohamad resigned last month in a surprise move. Turkey's President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has called on Greece to open its gates to migrants. In a televised speech, Erdogan said he would visit Belgium to discuss the issue with EU officials on Monday. In recent days, there has been hostility towards migrants on Lesbos after an increase in arrivals from Turkey. Hundreds of migrants have attempted to reach the island since Erdogan said he was opening the doors for the refugees to enter Europe last week. The EU has accused Erdogan of using migrants for political purposes, a claim Turkey denies. But there appears to have been no change in Turkey's position with regard to letting migrants try to enter Greece via this route. Turkey already hosts some 3.7 million Syrians, but the conflict in Syria's Idlib has led to nearly 1 million more fleeing to its southern border. Although the EU promised billions more euros in aid, Turkey was unimpressed and last week decided to open its borders with Greece. Turkish security forces say 2 PKK terrorists surrendered to security forces in the southeastern Sanilorfa province. The defense ministry said the militants deserted the terror group in northern Syria and turned themselves in at border posts in Surush. Interior Minister says since 27th of February, a total of 48 terrorists have surrendered after being persuaded by Turkish security forces. The PKK is listed as a terrorist organization by Turkey, the US and the EU. The group has been responsible for the deaths of 40,000 people. Italy has quarantined at least 16 million people in the Lombardy region and 14 other provinces as its coronavirus death toll tops 230. Prime Minister Giuseppe Conte says the lockdown will last until early April. More in this report.
As the world scrambles to contain the fast-spreading new coronavirus, depleting resources to aid prevention pose a major challenge. South Korea has limited the number of masks each person can buy each week. Argentina has reported its first death from coronavirus, the first fatality in Latin America. More than 50 deaths were recorded during the past 24 hours in Italy, as the number of confirmed cases jumped by 1,200. The Italian Prime Minister says tough measures to contain the new coronavirus are essential.
We want to guarantee the health of our citizens. We understand that all these measures will create inconveniences. We understand that these measures will impose sacrifices, sometimes small and sometimes very big. But this is a time where we must take responsibility for ourselves. We need to understand that all of us need to adhere to the measures.
After the state of California, New York's governor has declared a state of emergency as the number of infections rise. The US is also tracking a cruise ship that may have shared crew members with a ship carrying people who tested positive for coronavirus.
We are tracking at this point a ship that may have shared crew with the Diamond Princess or the Grand Princess. And we have taken decisive action to hold until we do a full medical assessment of the crew on that ship, and will just continue to lean into this effort.
In China, a hotel being used as a quarantine facility in Quanzhou city collapsed, trapping dozens underneath. The World Health Organization says more than 100,000 people worldwide have now contracted the virus. More than 3,000 people have died in China, mainly in the Hubei province where the outbreak originated.
In Iran, a health ministry spokesman has reported 49 more deaths from the new coronavirus, raising the death toll to over 190. In a televised speech, he said there were 743 new cases of infected people in the last 24 hours, pushing the total number of infections to over 6,500. Iran has one of the highest number of deaths from the illness outside of China. A number of senior Iranian officials have also died after contracting the virus. Iranians have been warned by the health ministry to avoid all the large gatherings and stay home. Meanwhile, the national carrier Air Iran has announced the suspension of all its flights to Europe until further notice. 10 people have died while 24 remain trapped under the rubble after a hotel in China's Guangzhou city collapsed. Officials say over 70 people were being quarantined in the 7-story building when it collapsed. The Ministry of Emergency said authorities had rescued 43 people, with 36 of them sent to a hospital. State media says the first floor of the building was under renovation. The Saudi-led coalition says it has launched a military operation against the Houthi rebels in Yemen's western Hodeidah province. The coalition said it targeted Houthi sites because they pose a threat to maritime navigation and international trade in the Bab al-Mandab Strait. The coalition said they have destroyed some Houthi sites that were used for manufacturing explosive-laden boats and drones in the Salif district. It also asked the civilians in the village not to approach the targeted sites until the military operation was completed. Yemen has been engulfed in an ongoing armed conflict between pro-Saudi forces led by President Abdurrabbu Mansour Hadi and the Houthis since 2015. The European Union has called for the immediate release of Siham Sarjiva, a member of Libya's parliament kidnapped by Khalifa Haftar's forces. In a statement, the EU said it remains strongly committed to promoting equal rights and opportunities for women and men. The statement also called upon relevant authorities to assume their responsibility and investigate Sarjiva's abduction. In July 2019, unidentified gunmen kidnapped Sarjiva from her home in Libya's eastern city of Benghazi. They took her to an unknown location and shot her husband. Egypt's President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi says Cairo will support Sudan's security and stability. Sisi said this during a telephonic conversation with Sudan's Sovereign Council Chairman Abdel Fattah al-Burhan. In a statement, the Egyptian presidency's spokesman said Cairo's strategic stance is to maintain cooperation and coordination with Khartoum. Al-Burhan lauded Cairo's support in bringing stability to Sudan in its transitional period. Ties between the two countries became strained over the past few years on various issues, but relations have witnessed improvement since the Sudanese army ousted former President Omar al-Bashir in 2019. It's time for a short break. We'll be back with more stories. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Donald Trump shocked the world when he became the president of the United States in 2016. But many who supported him back then aren't sticking with him 4 years later. This includes one Detroit-based Muslim cleric who has now declared his support for the Democrat Party candidate Bernie Sanders. What in this report?
One of Donald Trump's most controversial campaign promises was banning Muslims from entering the US. As such, it would seem unlikely that an American Muslim would ever support him. But that's exactly what Imam Hisham al-Husseini did after believing Trump's pledge to destroy ISIS. He now regrets his decision.
So he voted to remove ISIS, to fight ISIS, mean terrorist. So I supported him. Okay. But now it looks like somehow, some way, whether he recognized or not, his policy is supporting ISIS somehow, some way. Unfortunately.
Today, Imam al-Husseini supports Democrat Party candidate Bernie Sanders, citing his humanist values. He even talks about issues faced by the working class in his Friday sermons now.
Well, actually, our hearts leaning toward Mr. Sanders. Even though he's a Jew, we are Muslims, most of us, but the values that he is asking for and calling for, it is a universal value. It's for the middle class people, for the poor people, for the change.
Sanders is known for having a strong base with the American youth, but this wasn't enough to pull him through on Super Tuesday, when he trailed behind the only other Democrat candidate in the race, Joe Biden. But if Imam al-Husseini's Islamic Center is anything to go by, American Muslims could easily emerge as strong Bernie supporters.
115 migrants have been rescued in the Mediterranean Sea as they attempted to cross into Spain from Morocco. Spain Rescue Services said they found 2 boats stranded at sea near Malaga port. Members of the Spanish Red Cross helped migrants disembark and provided first aid at a makeshift emergency center. The Interior Ministry says overall sea arrivals of irregular migrants since 29th of February are 29% lower than the same time last year. Authorities said migrants have changed routes to reach Europe due to increased security in the Mediterranean Sea. Thousands of asylum seekers from Africa and the Middle East embark on the dangerous journey by sea every year to make it to Europe. Somalia state media says a senior Al-Shabaab commander has been killed in an airstrike. It said Bashir Mohammed Korakab was in charge of attacks on military bases and was also involved in operations in Kenya. The US carries out frequent airstrikes in Somalia, but it has not yet commented on the report. However, Bashir's family confirmed his death. In 2008, the US issued a reward of $5 million for information on the whereabouts of the militant commander. Al-Shabaab is linked to Al-Qaeda and controls much of southern and central Somalia. 32 people have been killed in an accident on a road connecting Syrian capital Damascus to Homs province. The Interior Ministry says 77 others were injured as brake failure caused a fuel tanker to crash into 15 vehicles and 2 buses. The ministry said the buses were carrying several Iraqi passengers. The official said victims are believed to include Shiite pilgrims visiting holy shrines near the capital. Footage aired on state media showed rescue teams deployed around the mangled remains of the vehicles. In Pakistan, the death toll from the 5-story building collapse in the port city of Karachi has risen to 26. Rescue services said 5 more bodies were taken out from under the collapsed building's debris. The rescue operation continued for a 4th straight day, with authorities barring families of the missing from going near the building. Yesterday, 3 bodies were recovered on the 3rd day of the rescue operation in the affected area. The residential building had fallen onto adjacent structures, bringing them on the ground as well. A case has already been registered at Karachi police station over the collapse of the building. International Women's Day is being marked around the globe today. The day celebrates women's achievements and increases visibility in the public sphere while calling out inequality. More in this report.
Hundreds of thousands of women have gathered in cities across the world to mark International Women's Day. In Peru's capital, Lima, thousands of women called for justice to be done for female victims of violence and murders in the country.
We are all demanding justice, equality, for there to be no more exploitation of women, no more femicides, murders. We are looking for justice for all women. In
Mexico, women performed an anthem condemning the killings of women, channeling anger along with hope for justice. Femicides have risen 137% in the last 5 years, and recent cases have drawn outrage for their brutality.
I wake up every day and I see on Facebook, Twitter, on the news, on the radio. I get into a taxi and I hear that bodies keep on being found, women who are killed. So this is a feeling of anguish that I have, of anger. But I also have a lot of hope that this movement could blossom.
In the Spanish capital of Madrid, dozens of women performed A Rapist in Your Path. The song has gone viral after it originated in Chile, turning into a mighty global war against sexual violence. In the UK, Duchess of Sussex Meghan Markle encouraged school children to support women's empowerment, social justice, and gender equality issues. International Women's Day has occurred for well over a century, with the first gathering in 1911 supported by over 1 million people.
This Women's Day, it's important to remember war's impact on women all over the world. One displaced Syrian widow and mother of 3 has turned to volunteer work near the Turkish-Syrian border to forget her sorrows. Here's her story.
White Helmets member Manar lost her husband early in the horrific Syrian conflict. Apart from working as a medic, she also cares for her 3 children. Right now, she's based in the village of Shmarin near the Turkish border at the heart of the Syrian war.
Many people would tell me to leave work and stay with my children, but I felt that just like my children need me, there are people here who need me. As everyone knows, we had a great shortage of doctors and medics in the eastern Ghouta, so I decided to resume my work while letting God help me with my children. These are the difficulties that faced me.
It's not easy work by any means, especially for a single mother. Manal says the people here, including medics, regularly struggle with crushing mental health issues.
There is no life if we do not adapt. We will feel depressed, our mental health will deteriorate. Sometimes I am tired, sometimes I am depressed. But then I remember the old times. We just want to keep moving forward. We want to overcome all difficulties and keep moving forward. In a world that needs us, we want to keep on moving forward.
One IDP says the refugee camps are especially hard on women.
Women's life here in the camp is truly very difficult. It is harder than you can imagine, especially in my case. My husband died in the war 5 years ago. I'm raising 4 orphan children.
The latest round of fighting in northwestern Syria has displaced around 1 million people. The brunt of this humanitarian disaster has been borne by the area's women, but their will to live on hasn't been extinguished.
In Afghanistan, a business venture has not only given women a chance to be independent, it is also making sure to save the environment. Zero-carbon mobile food carts in Kabul are a delicious treat for the residents. What in this report?
Covered with a full-body garment, 30-year-old Maryam Mohammadi was once in Pakistan as a refugee for many years to escape the war in Afghanistan. Now in Kabul, she sells dairy and food and is the only breadwinner for her family. She says this job is very crucial to improve life and hopes to continue working.
I'm so tired of conflicts and bombings. If there will be a peace and stability in our country, then no family will be left unattended, and the children and the rest of the people will not get killed anymore. We just want lasting peace in Afghanistan.
27-year-old Farhad Wajdi, who founded this rickshaw business, aims to expand it all over the country to provide job opportunities for more women.
Right now, we have manufactured 25 zero-carbon food carts, and we have employed 2 women on each cart. So it becomes like 50 women so far. We have employed 50 women so far. And this year, we're expanding our food carts to 100. And hopefully, we can expand our operations in other parts of Afghanistan where women are treated really, really badly.
Afghan society for a long time excluded women from social and economic opportunities. But the Taliban's approach have recently been more moderate, as they say Islam gives women rights in areas such as business and ownership. This has encouraged businesses like Banu's Kitchen to flourish to eradicate women's miseries.
Musaka Fernanda, a farmer in Angola's rural south, works at land to feed her 9 children, but with dramatic shifts in the weather and her husband far away in the city, it's an ever harder task to put food on the table. What in this report?
First there was the drought, and then came torrential rain and severe flooding. Southern Angola's farmland has been devastated. By now, Musaka Fernanda's crops should have been towering over her head. But the 47-year-old farmer has little to harvest. To her, climate change means hunger.
We've been waiting for rain for 6 months. 6 months without rain, and before that we had winter. When the rains came, we were so thankful. We were relieved. But they came too hard, and then we had no way of tending to our crops. We were not able to go to the fields.
With the threat of famine looming, Musaka alone is responsible for feeding her 9 children. Like many men in the region, her husband moved to the city in search of work.
He left because of hunger. There was a time when he used to buy food for the children. They used to share the work. But when the hunger got bad, he decided to go.
And it's not just the mothers. Humanitarian group World Vision finds that their daughters also live the consequences of climate change.
Because of families being separated or abandoned, we find a lot of families with a single parent, so it's the girls that end up helping their mothers in one way or another. So they are likely to stop studying. They first need to provide for their basic needs.
Musaka's 2 eldest daughters dropped out of school to help out at home. But when her eldest fell pregnant, Musaka asked her to move out and live with the father.
My mother said, "You have to get married because you can't burden me with this. I'm already struggling enough with all of you. I cannot suffer more with you, your baby and your boyfriend.
It was a difficult decision, but Musaka had few alternatives. 45 million people face famine in southern Africa, according to the UN, and 8 of them are dependent on Musaka's daily efforts, as she continues to work the land alone and in the face of climate change.
Indigenous people make up to 2% of Argentina's population of 43 million. They are limited to far-flung areas of the country where water pollution, unhygienic conditions and malnutrition are killing indigenous children. Let's look at the situation in this report.
Argentina has around 18 different indigenous groups who remain invisible in mainstream society. Most live in remote parts of the country where they are deprived of life's basic necessities. This includes the Wichi community, who suffer from lack of clean water, availability of food and pollution. 8 of its children have died within the last month. Local hospital beds are filled with children battling malnutrition and other health issues. Hospital authorities say malnutrition is not the only issue. The children are also suffering from diarrhea.
There are children that have problems. They have diarrhea, they vomit and lose weight. There are times that they are taken to Tartagal and recover there, but when they return, the problem returns because of the water. This is not safe water.
The community also has one of the highest rates of infant mortality in the country.
The place they use as a water source is already either contaminated or has high standards of salinization or even chemical products from the extraction site at very shallow depths, or because they store the water in containers that have been used before for chemicals associated with agriculture, which cause them to have many gastrointestinal diseases, diarrhea, malnutrition, and above all, dehydration.
Indigenous people face an appalling plight all over Argentina.
The situation is a disaster on all levels. Education, health, access to jobs, access to water, life expectancy, infant mortality, malnutrition, everything. There is no good news. What can be done? There is no long-term plan, not a short-term plan, which is what constantly happens.
The country is also struggling with the financial depression. Inflation hovers at above 50% and the poverty rate is currently at 35.4%. The country's indigenous communities, who have been economically vulnerable historically, have been especially hard hit.
More stories to follow, but right after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back. A new online streaming service, Means TV, claims to be the internet's first post-capitalist worker-owned platform. The service eschews corporate backers and venture capital in favor of a user-based subscription model. Its owners say independence from advertisers allows it to cover controversial topics more openly. More in this report.
We go to the Bernie rally. Means TV was initially launched in Detroit last month and has gotten 2,500 subscribers since. Its founders, Naomi Burton and Nick Hayes, say they want to create democratically created content which resonates with the average working people. Hayes says he believes this group of people is sorely underrepresented on mainstream streaming services.
Sorts of things, while we get kibbles.
You know, we look at Means TV as both an option to cut the cord with Netflix and Hulu in these places, or as a supplementary place where you can get the sort of other perspective from young working class people.
Co-founder Naomi Burton says she got the idea for the service after US President Donald Trump's election in 2016.
After the 2016 election, when, my Democratic Party lost what we felt like was the easiest to win election of all time, we, really felt like we needed to put our skills to this movement.
The service offers coverage of issues like the Israel-Palestine dispute from perspectives usually missing in the American narrative. There's also a children's cartoon about 2 cats who become radicalized after discovering they're being exploited by their owner. Much of Means TV's content is geared towards exposing the failures of modern capitalism.
Doesn't drink our water or breathe our air, cannot possibly represent us.
We see our neighbors being evicted constantly, dealing with ridiculous water bills. The energy companies are screwing people over, and the air pollution situation in the city of Detroit is just horrible. So, you know, there's so much to look at as far as the failures of capitalism here in this city that I think that certainly bleeds into our work.
It remains to be seen how successful this venture will be, as the streaming market is already extremely saturated, with Netflix, HBO, and Amazon all vying for a bigger piece of the pie. Most Hollywood executives have rejected Means TV's post-capitalist model, saying it will not work.
In the Egyptian region of Nubia, a love of crocodiles goes back to the days of Egyptian pharaohs. Today, Nubians raise them as tame pets to attract tourists. This report tells us how they do it.
Nubia in the south of Egypt is a land with a very long history, which includes a fascination for crocodiles. In the past, they were worshipped and mummified. Now they are domesticated and kept as pets. In Gharb Sohail, a village beside the Nile in southern Egypt, a baby crocodile sits on Mamdouh Hussein's shoulder. This, unsurprisingly, brings in the tourists, and that is the idea. Tame crocs bring in the tourists who spend their money here.
We bring up baby crocodiles and raise them to grow up near Nasser Lake. We raise them since they are babies, so they grow up with us and their aggressive nature is tempered. So they would be similar to any other pet that we might be raising at home.
Keeping crocodiles became a way to supplement incomes and promote their heritage. Victors snap selfies with the lounging lizards, while villagers regale them with Nubian folk tales. A stuffed crocodile on the door of a house shows that the homeowner keeps the large reptiles as pets.
The average lifespan of a crocodile ranges from 70 to 80 years, and as they grow older, they could reach a length of 3 or 4 meters. The owner slaughters it and mummifies its body and then puts it in front of his house as a decoration to attract tourists.
Nubians have a tradition of crocodile taxidermy, going back thousands of years, one they still maintain today. And the way they do it now remains true to the centuries-old techniques.
Lebanon's Prime Minister Hassan Diab has suspended a bond payment of $1.2 billion, saying the country's remaining foreign currency reserves are needed to meet basic needs. The decision has been welcomed by anti-government protesters, but there are also fears that the move could lead to higher taxes. More on this report.
Lebanon's economy has been in a tailspin since the early 2010s, with the per capita GDP reaching its lowest value since 2008. By the same time, the debt-to-GDP ratio reached 151%. It was these conditions that led to mass anti-government protests in October last year.
We cannot take more pain than this. I gave my wife 50,000 lira, but it's not enough to make a meal. If you have a family with 4 kids, it's not even enough for food.
For these reasons, protesters have supported Prime Minister Hassan Diab's decision to suspend the bond payment. But many fear the government's move is a sign that things might take a turn for the worse. People are most concerned about additional taxes.
They're talking about new measures that aren't going to be popular. They're saying new taxes on discretionary things. But if this is true, with all the ongoing problems with the dollar exchange and the banks and not having liquidity, things will explode. God help us.
Suspending the bond payment also means the value of the local currency could be slashed by as much as 40%. $1 is already worth about 1,500 Lebanese liras. As such, the country is likely undergoing the biggest risk to its stability since the end of its 15-year-long civil war.
The Consul General of Thailand, Tatri Chowachata, says the trade between Islamabad and Bangkok has jumped to $1.5 billion in 2019. The Thai envoy was addressing a meeting at Lahore Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Thai envoy said Pakistani export to Thailand recorded an increase of over 41% in 2019, which included garments and textiles. Chowachata said Thailand have exported goods and services worth nearly $1.2 billion to Pakistan last year. He said 4 major Thai companies had already invested in Pakistan, while another 4 are exploring new opportunities. Shares in the energy-dependent Gulf have plunged to multi-year lows today after OPEC and its allies failed to clinch a deal on production cuts. All other Gulf markets also tumbled as oil prices continue being hit by the novel coronavirus over the past month. The Saudi stock market dived by 7.7% minutes from the opening bell after oil prices closed near a 4-year low on Friday. Shares in oil giant Saudi Aramco dropped below their IPO price of $8.85 for the first time, losing some 6%. The slide on the Saudi market came amid reports of high-level arrests in the ruling family. The Dubai financial market shed 8.5% at one point, its worst decline in 6 years, before recovering slightly. Its sister market in Abu Dhabi also lost 7%, while Qatar Stock Exchange dropped 3.5%. The tiny markets of Bahrain slid 3% and Oman dropped by 1.1%. Another weather situation from around the globe. And that's all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at Indus News.